PlayStation Plus February 2025. Pac-Man World Re-Pac versus High on Life. Welcome to OTR Debate, the podcast where three lawyers debate the nerdiest questions while bringing it back to the law. Tonight we're debating a couple of games from PlayStation Plus February 2025. I'll let the debaters introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Mucci, and I work in immigration, and I am doing Pac-Man, Re-Pac.
Re-Pacs. I'm Lando. I'm a prosecutor. I'm doing High on Life.
And I'm Wee. I'll be your judge for tonight. Before we start the debate, we're going to check out the procedural history and see how we got here. Andy, roll the tape. So February's here. Should we record something? It's been a while.
I mean, I'd kind of rather be playing video games.
Yeah, that checks out.
What did you say to me?
I said, that checks out. You've been way too scared to debate me since the last time, so...
Hey, I won Aliens vs. Terminator.
No, I'm talking about the one where we didn't release because you flipped your shit and broke your microphone, and now we're on hiatus.
You said we weren't going to talk about that. Do it.
Then face me. Let's debate. And I'll tell you what, I'll even debate you in something precious to you. Video games. And I'll spank you. I will spank you.
Fine. The new PlayStation Plus games just dropped, so let's debate that.
Do it. Now that we know how we got to court, let's start. As always, the format to the debates are openings, a few questions by me, and a recess, closings, and then my verdict.
High on Life is a 2022 game by Justin Rowland and Squanch Games. It is a story that follows a kid. I think he's a teenager. They never name his name, but he's a teenager that is in the middle of this alien invasion where the aliens are the mafia, the cartels. They are basically trying to enslave the human population to smoke them and hallucinate. So the storyline goes, he becomes a bounty hunter and he's trying to save the world by killing these cartel members. The visuals are great, super colorful. Game mechanics are on point, if you ask me, with different guns that talk to you, which highlights the most important part of this game, the comedy of it. If you know Rick and Morty, you know where this game is going. I love it.
This February, PlayStation Plus brought us this 2022 remake of classic 90s platformer Pac-Man World, released in 1999 for the PlayStation. It brings players instantly back to the golden era of 3D platformers, with various quality of life improvements to make the game easier to jump and butt bounce into than it would be to go back to the original. But what remains unchanged are many of the core mechanics and detailed level design that make the game so fun to play, find collectibles, including fruit of course, and rescue all of Pac-Man's family members. Now, I know in the gaming world we're inundated with remakes, but this is the exact type of game that should be remade. It's not a game from the last generation, it's a game from 1999, several generations ago. And these graphical updates and quality of life improvements make the game less punishing and more fun to play in the about 3 or 4 hours that it takes you to finish it.
Well, after hearing both of your openings, I am pretty excited to hear about your games. So I'm pretty familiar with Pac-Man just from the arcades growing up, but I was not high on life as a kid. So I'm excited to see where you, bring up these details about that. Yeah, so after hearing all of this, if you can relate to these two millennial nerds, then hit that subscribe button. All right, so for my first question, I just kind of want to hear a little bit more about the game creation and kind of like the context surrounding the beginning of these games.
Yeah, so mine is a bit older in some ways because the original game came out in 1999 for the PlayStation 1. But again, it began as a prototype game called Pac-Man Ghost Zone, where the premise was a teenager was basically sucked into a Pac-Man cabinet by the ghosts and turned into Pac-Man himself.
What?
Basically like Pac-Man Isekai, I guess. But it's like, that was like, it was reported that was going to be the game. And then Namco was unhappy with the prototype that they put out there and then fired the whole development team and canceled that game, except for a designer, Scott Rogers, who then became head designer of Pac-Man World. And he created many of the stage layouts and the enemy designs for it. So basically, a couple years after that prototype came out, the Pac-Man World game finally released in 1999, and they eventually made like a shittier looking version for the Game Boy Advance later in 2004. But it was like a 3D platformer, kind of more like Crash Bandicoot maybe than Mario, because you go into individual levels and you mostly still side scroll. You don't have that kind of full roam that you have in a lot of the Mario levels, like Mario 64 and stuff like that. So you're kind of going from left to right, but you can go to different parts of the level. There's secrets and stuff like that. And anyway, this game is a remake of it. Came out in 2022. Developed by Now Productions and published by Bandai Namco. And it recreates the game in 4K resolution and 60 frames per second, if you care about that stuff.
I don't.
It has some new music tracks and changes some of the character and background designs, just kind of updates the game in that way. And then there's some gameplay changes to it as well. So Pac-Man can do this kind of like flutter jump if he's going to fall off a ledge or something like that.
Is that how he does it? Like his little legs just kind of like...
Yeah, he kicks his legs. Yeah, you can do that.
Interesting.
That's
So
an addition to the
he has
2022.
legs.
He has legs, yeah. Yeah, so Pac-Man's like running around. He has legs, but a huge circular body and just like little stubby legs. So you can kick those little stubby legs to get, a little bit more air if he's going to fall off a ledge or something.
Is he like the Kool-Aid guy?
Sounds more like Kirby to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's he looks like the majority of his body is still the circular. It's a sphere now, but just on like little legs, and he has arms too, and stuff like that.
I think that's where the legal question is going to come in. Getting sued by the Kirby team.
Well, maybe who was the lawyer, like John Kirby or something
John
like that.
Kirby.
Yeah, maybe he's part of it again. But yeah, so like he has various. I guess we'll get into the gameplay mechanics more later, but that's how the game was developed. But yeah, he does a various sort of attacks and jumps, like sort of like Mario does when he turns into 3D. Like he can, like Mario can now like punch in the 3D versions. Like Pac-Man can throw his pellets out, for example. So I'll get more into that later, though.
Okay. All right.
So for my game, when I picked it, because we kind of went through this and we saw the 3 games, and Mucci, I think you wanted to do Pac-Man right away, right?
Yeah. Seemed cool. I never played the old version of it, so.
Yeah. And High on Life kind of seemed interesting just because it was just colorful on the cover of it.
That's a good title, too.
Yeah. And so I had no idea about this game at all. So when I started it, basically the first thing that you're doing is you're playing a very 90s, like basically like a Doom kind of game, like very like old looking game. And it's just a first person shooter, and you're shooting aliens. And I'm like, what the fuck am I playing? Like this, I thought this was a newer game. This is supposed to come out in 22. And then I hear the voice of apparently the character's divorce attorney who's telling him like, oh, these aliens screwed your wife. And he's talking about how these aliens and you're involved in an affair with the wife, how he's going to get him so much money and how he loves him. And I'm like, wait a second, this voice sounds familiar. And it was Rick from Rick and Morty. And I'm like, okay, this is coming together because the raunchiness of this mixed with his voice. And I looked it up. Squanch Games and the creator of Rick and Morty involved in this game. And basically that's the biggest highlight of this game is the comedy of it all. The colors add to it. It's very much a Rick and Morty kind of thing because it's very out there in your face. And these aliens all look kind of weird and they're all different colors and they all have something going on with them. So I was just very interested from like basically right when I started. And from there, the game mechanics are they're, for a first person shooter, they're not bad. Mm-hmm. They're, they could probably be better, but they're not. Are
the graphics more updated later?
Yeah. So sorry about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's actually like.
So that's like a video game that the main character was playing. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then cut scene to his sister telling him to get off that game and then immediately offering him Coke.
Coca-Cola.
Coca-Cola. And then there's an alien invasion and everything starts, setting off. And basically every character you talk to has some funny line, and it did it for me. So
Well, I think after hearing your answers to that first question, I think it's ready for a recess. And in today's recess, we're going to play a new mini game called Court Reporter Shorthand. And in this mini game, I will read out some acronyms for both of you, somewhat related to each of your games, and you're gonna have to try and guess what these acronyms stand for.
Okay.
All right.
Does that sound good to you?
Yeah.
Okay, who wants to go first?
Mucci, you can go first.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
All right, Mucci, the first acronym I have for you is PPT. And it's not PowerPoint.
PPT.
This
Points
is-
per turn? Or, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, this is going to be a tough one, I think.
Yeah. Points per turn? No.
We might have to workshop this game, but we'll see how this goes.
I had a lot more confidence before hearing that one.
It is not points per turn.
What is it?
It is paku paku taberu,
Oh my gosh.
which
Which is
is
what?
the Japanese phrase that is where the original name of the game, Pac-Man, came from.
Okay, that's a good one.
Yeah, so it used to be, it originally was Pac-Man.
Mucci was never going to get it, but
Yeah,
that's a good one.
exactly. But that's good. Yeah.
You know, it was a little bit tough finding these acronyms. But just for the viewers and listeners' knowledge,
that's good
Pac-Man
information.
was the original name. But after American executives were worried about people vandalizing the P into an F, they decided to change it to Pac-Man.
Ah, okay.
Okay.
All right, Lando. Your first
I'm
one
scared.
is TSTU.
TSTU. There's no way I'm ever getting
Some
this.
university?
Yeah.
It is Trover Saves the Universe,
Okay.
which is the studio's first game.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't have a lot of backstory on that.
Okay.
Not as much.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
It was changed the name from Trevor Saves the Universe.
I thought it was going to be so. High on Life has in the game. You could go to like a movie theater and they have like B-roll. Like they have like old movies that just play like fully. You could watch a full movie within the game. So I
Does
thought it
it
was
count
going
to
to be.
your gameplay time?
I don't know. I mean,
The 2-hour film.
Well, the gameplay is like pretty quick, not as quick as Pac-Man, but it's like 9-10-ish hours if you just complete it. But then it becomes like 20+ hours if
watch
you
every
do all
movie?
this. Yeah, if you do all this stuff.
Is there a
Yeah.
trophy for watching every movie?
I probably there's some achievement.
Yeah.
I didn't do it.
All right, Mucci, you ready?
I guess so, yeah.
Your next and final acronym is PMGZ.
Okay, Pac-Man, Ghost Zone.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, because
Ding, ding, ding,
it was
ding,
the
ding.
prototype. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Give me an easy one.
All right.
As Andre 3000 sang about.
I'm hoping this will be easy for you.
Okay, we'll see.
Although
Probably not.
It's HOK.
High on kills.
Oh.
No.
Oh.
It is High on Knife,
Oh, high on knife.
which I found is downloadable content
Okay.
based on one of the characters, Knifey.
Yeah, knifey. He's my favorite actually. He just wants to kill every fucking person.
And he's voiced by Tim Robinson.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, well,
Liking
thanks
this
for
game more and more.
thanks for playing Court Reporter Shorthand.
Yeah.
If anything, it was more just me informing some tidbits of trivia.
Yeah.
That was good. Yeah.
The more you know.
So let's get back into the questions. My second question, since both of you started talking a little bit about gameplay, I just kind of want to hear a little bit more, how Pac-Man kicks his little legs and how this first-person shooter works out in High on Life. But yeah, anything you like or dislike about the gameplay of the game.
Yeah, I could go before I
Yeah.
completely forget what I was going to say. So in terms of like the storyline and the gameplay, you're a bounty hunter trying to kill these cartels, and you start off with the whole thing kicks off with the kid picking up a gun from a dead alien. And the gun, what's interesting about this game is that it's not a first person shooter where you just have these guns that are, killing machines. These guns are like alive. They're like an alien species called Gatlings. And so the first one you get is named Kenny, and he's just a regular pistol. He is it's Morty. It's like, and so it's funny like hearing him like talking to you about generally he doesn't want you to kill people, but he's kind of, helps you get around and is very active in talking to you about stuff. Then as the game progresses, you get different kind of guns, and there's different voices to these guns. As you mentioned, Knifey is my personal favorite because he is just very bloodthirsty, whereas Kenny's kind of like, oh, you don't have to kill everybody. Knifey wants to stab the shit out of everybody. Tim Robinson. There's also one of the guns later on in the game is voiced by JB Smoove from Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Leon.
And they all have like different personalities, and they have you have your typical like type of shot, like a regular pistol shot, but they also have like a trick shot, and it's activated through their trick hole. So you gotta load up their trick hole, and they do different things. So Knifey, he stabs things, but he also is like you could kind of sling on different things. So like these guns activate different parts of the environment. So, whereas you couldn't have climbed up a certain spot, Knifey can like get you up there. There's a gun that can slow down time. Kenny, he does these glob shots, and he says you got to shoot it from his trick hole, and it kind of it seems like it turns him on when you do it. And he does this big huge glob shot, and it could knock down certain things so that you get to certain places. Wow. So I mean, those are certain things that I thought were pretty cool. Like, it's not just a gun. You're like interacting with this alien, and it's interacting with you. Which, if you're a fan of Rick and Morty, you're gonna love it because there's a lot of it. If you're not so much a fan of Rick and Morty, you could turn it down, because I guess there's a setting that if you don't want them to talk to you as much, you could like turn down how active they are in talking to you. I loved it because I was like laughing my ass off the entire time.
Like an E-rated version of it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it ever gets that far, but you could turn it down. And then when you interact with different people. Another highlight that I thought was pretty cool is when you interact with someone like an NPC, as they say.
Is NPC?
Yeah, NPC. When you like bump into them and you like talk to them, they always have something kind of funny to say. But when you're interacting with someone that gives you kind of options on what to talk to them about, when you leave them and come back, it's kind of like they're remembering, oh, we left off our conversation here. Like, yeah, that's what I was going to tell you. Like, I was going to say this. Oh, you're back. Stuff like that, which I don't see too often in different games. It just kind of starts up the dialogue again. So it was kind of interesting. And just the characters kind of do it for me. So, yeah.
All right. Mucci?
So, as I mentioned before, the level design is kind of, it's like a side scroller, but it's 3D. But you kind of do go from left to right, the traditional way to like get through a level, like in Mario and many other games like that. But he has various attacks or things he can do to get to higher ledges or things like that. So he's got this butt bounce, which is kind of like Mario's ground pound, where you jump up
butt
and
bounce, ground pound.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same thing. But
should have done BBGP.
yeah. BB/GP. But he it allows him to bounce up. So you can bounce off enemies with it. You can bounce off the ground just to get to higher ledges. It's a way to kind of... You can bounce several times as well, unlike the ground pound, which is just one down and you're done.
Did they animate his butt?
No.
Yeah, does he have cheeks?
They don't show that, though. I don't think. I didn't look that closely.
Yeah, right.
But you can also collect a stock of pellets, traditional Pac-Man eating pellets, and you have like a stockpile of them, so you can throw those at enemies to kill them too. And you can
Where
also...
did the pellets come out of?
He throws them. So I don't know if he gets them out of his mouth and throws them. I didn't pay attention that closely to all the animations.
He throws this at them.
I'm just looking at every animation of every movement, but basically you collect the pellets and you can throw them at enemies.
Losing points there.
Maybe he grabs them out of himself. I don't know.
Huh. It's like the only change from the original version to the remake is they animate his butt, and that's where he get these pellets from.
Anyway, he can also do basically a Sonic like it's called a rev roll, where he can rev up and he turns into like a ball form, and he can shoot off at enemies. And you can also shoot off ramps. You sometimes have to do that to get to certain ledges. But yeah, aside from that, the level design is kind of straightforward, but some complexity if you want to get all the collectibles. So the main thing is that in each world, one of Pac-Man's family members is imprisoned, and you can unlock their cages to rescue them.
Is it Mrs. Pac-Man?
Miss Pac-Man is one of them, although
Miss or Mrs.?
I think it's Miz.
It is Ms., but
Something happened there.
in the remake they call her something different. I remember that being a difference. They call her like Mom Pac-Man or something like that, but it's his wife. I'm pretty sure.
So it's like a Pence kind of thing.
Yeah. Mommy Pac-Man. So that's one thing with it. They're all in there's like five worlds, or maybe six, and like 4 levels in each world. But in one of those levels is one of the Pac family members in a cage. So you can find a key and then open the cage, and it gets kind of harder to find them though in each subsequent world that they're in, because like toward the end you have to like do something really difficult to find the key and then like backtrack and find where they are, and often go through multiple layers to get them out of the cage. Now in the original game it was mandatory to unlock all of them to beat the game, but in this one it's optional. But you want to do it to get the true ending of the game. You just leave them in the cages.
Like, you don't need to save everyone.
Yeah, you don't need to save them. But one thing that's cool is that in the final boss fight, the ones that you've saved will throw health out to Pac-Man if his health gets low. So you can like basically have a lot more health than you would have normally.
Where did they get the health to throw?
I don't know.
I'm cutting here. So yeah, I mean the boss battles in Hyperlife, pretty good. Like in terms of like the enemies and stuff, not the greatest, or there's not much variety to them. They're all kind of like the same kind of aliens, which makes sense to the storyline. Like they're all cartel members. Like it's, it's this gang. They should probably all be somewhat similar in terms of not making it too complicated. But the boss battles are pretty good. And, the one that I thought was really cool was essentially you're going to this boss, this bounty that you want to get, and you meet an octopus that's in these sewers, right? And he's like, "Hey, can you help me? I'm trying to meet the boss's name. I forget his name, but he's got my family. He's gonna kill him. Can you help me?" And then he has you rearrange the pipes so that he could go through the pipes and get to him. His name's Dr. Joopy, and he's he creates this quick bond with the main character, let's help him save his kids. The gun, Morty, is like, I don't know, Joopy's gonna get his ass killed by I think it's Douglas. Douglas is the boss name. He's like, Douglas is gonna kill his ass. He's so soft and innocent, and like you create this real bond throughout this level of different areas where you're doing the sewer. And when you get to the boss, you're met with Dr. Joopy, and Dr. Joopy was the fucking boss. He's Douglas.
Betrayed.
Yeah, complete betrayal. And we try to reason with him, and we try to tell him you should have stayed Dr. Joopy. People like Dr. Joopy. You could have quit being Douglas. Everybody fucking hates Douglas, but he he tries to kill you. So I don't know, that was one of my favorite boss battles.
Yeah, speaking of boss battles, there's some really fun ones in this game. One of them, all of a sudden, it turns into a race. It's the only level that is like a racing level. So it turns into a race where you have to beat these several different, I guess they're ghosts or whatever. But maybe just typical Pac-Man villain. But one that's really cool is that there's a space themed world, and the last level of that basically turns into Galaga, because Pac-Man gets into a ship and you're shooting various enemy ships. And then there's like a big enemy ship as the boss, and it turns into like this kind of bullet hell thing where you have to dodge the bullets and shoot at different parts of him to shut him down. So it's pretty cool, like different.
Was there any
designs of it.
reference to Pixels, the Adam Sandler movie,
Well,
which features Galaga and Pac-Man?
no, there was.
What year did this come out?
Originally came out in 1989. So
Okay, that's maybe not
way before Pixels. Maybe Pixels referencing it. Who knows? But yeah, I think it was because of those have always been kind of connected. In fact, in my legal answer, I'm going to mention a machine that famously has both of those. That you kind of see. You kind of see that machine everywhere. If you see Pac-Man, it usually has Galaga with it, right? But in any event, one of the other things I want to mention, the last thing, is that another one of those sort of collectible things is you can find these keys, and you can find fruit and it unlocks different doors, but there's keys that unlock a very specific type of door, and those have a bonus level that's a maze level, and it transports you into a kind of classic Pac-Man level, but 3D-ified. So you're going through and just eating up all the pellets. There's the 4 like pellets in each corner that make him bigger, and he can eat the ghosts. It turns into like a classic Pac-Man level. So those are pretty cool too.
All right, and on to our third and final question. As always, will be legal related. So can you tie back your game to the law somehow, and why your position on these games is legally better than the other?
Yeah, well, at least Pac-Man in general, I can tie back. So there's kind of a history of legal disputes with Pac-Man property because essentially 3 different parties got involved in one of the earliest games in the series. And the original Pac-Man released in Japanese arcades in 1980. It was developed and published by Namco. And then go to 1981, there's a group of MIT students led by Doug McRae and Kevin Curran, and they hacked the Atari game Missile Command to enhance it into Super Missile Attack. And they formed a new company called General Computer Corporation to sell the enhancement kits. Now, Atari first sued GCC, is what their acronym is, and then GCC countersued, but the lawsuit was dropped, and in the settlement, Atari agreed to hire the GCC team to work for them. But unbeknownst to them, GCC was secretly developing another enhancement kit for Pac-Man this time, which it called Crazy Otto. But part of the settlement with Atari is that GCC couldn't create any enhancement kits for any game, not even for non-Atari games. So GCC ended up pitching Crazy Otto directly to the to the American distributor of Pac-Man, Midway. And Midway was waiting for Namco to make their own sequel to Pac-Man, and instead decided to license the game, this Crazy Otto game that was an enhancement of Pac-Man. They demonstrated it to Namco of Japan's president, and all 3 parties actually approved it, and the game was fully licensed and released. And that game would be released as Ms. Pac-Man in 1982.
Okay. Spoiler.
Interesting. So that's her maiden name of sorts.
Yeah.
Crazy Otto.
She's Crazy Otto.
Got married to Ms. Pac-Man.
Yeah.
Well, in 1982, I mean, did she know Pac-Man at that point?
No, she was just on her own.
Just doing her thing,
Yeah,
right?
doing her thing.
She was crazy.
So mine, I know what you're thinking. Justin Roiland, Rick and Morty. I know you're thinking, hey, he's probably going to talk about his domestic violence charge and how it was dropped because of lack of evidence. No, I'm not going to talk about that because the game has got a lot of legal issues and questions throughout it. Okay, so when you start like really getting into it, right at the very beginning, because it's a very fast-paced game, you're faced with a issue of how do I get past this alien child who keeps bumping me and he won't let me pass, and the gun's like telling you to, you have to get past him, like we got to go down there, and this kid just keeps like bumping you and you're not able to get past him, so you shoot him and you kill the kid, and then the gun is telling you, Kenny's telling you like, oh my god, you just killed a kid, like you shot a kid, like you killed him, like he like really makes you feel it. But then you get down a little bit further through that area, and you end up meeting his mom. And his mom's like, you killed him, didn't you? I told him not to be messing around with people calling him, jerks and this and that. And she's like, oh, don't feel bad. And he's not really a kid. He was like 30 something years old. For us, it's a kid, but he's lived some life. And so it kind of like, takes away from the situation of what you just did. But there's also other like areas in the game where you're doing like very questionable things as a bounty hunter and no real repercussions whatsoever, because part of it is you're dealing with the cartel and part of it is you're like in this space like no man's land where no laws are really applying.
Sounds like the United States of America.
Yeah, I mean, no comment on that. But so I guess what I'm getting at is throughout this game, you have the choice of basically killing all these like innocent bystanders, or you could go around it and not do it. Which at a certain section I came across, I noticed that you potentially could kill these like construction guys that were like, no, you can't go in this area. I just went around them and I got to where I needed to go. But apparently a lot of people do. And then the gun makes you feel guilty for doing it. And like, you didn't have to do that. You could have just, gone around them or whatever. So it brings up kind of, a morality thing. Like how, are you going to play this like, Grand Theft Auto, or are you going to kind of play it a little bit more straight laced? You could do it either way because there's no one really stopping you.
All right. Well, now is the time for closing arguments. And just want to really keep it short like usual. Just either, attacking the other side or really just, hitting it home for your game in a minute or less.
Okay.
If I'm going to attack Pac-Man, I think it's probably it's an easy attack, right? Like it's Pac-Man. It's just a ball that rolls around apparently.
He has legs.
He's got legs now, but I guess the way I see it is why remake a game that nobody liked in the first place? Pac-Man's been around for a long time. That's fine and well, but as I mentioned Pixels before, he was kind of an asshole in that movie. And from the sound of what Mucci's been telling us, I think it's basically a knockoff of Kirby, Mario. I think you mentioned another game, right? There was another game in
Crash
there.
Bandicoots and Sonic.
Yeah, and Sonic, yes. So I think it's not anything that's original, whereas High on Life is very original in terms of like the comedic, things that go throughout it, the interesting nature of like the guns that are responding to you. You're interacting with these weapons and these tools that you have. I think it just kind of lacks creativity. I think it's just like a money grab, cash grab, if you will, as Knifey would say. And I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was definitely an attack. So, any response?
Well, all I have to say about all this comedy I'm hearing about, it sounds a little edgy, sounds a little juvenile for, the pee hole or whatever that you're shooting out of.
Trick hole,
yeah.
Doesn't Pac-Man throw his vomit?
This is a lore made up during this podcast episode, I think. But Pac-Man, it's a family experience. You're saving your family. You're saving Pac-Man's family.
You don't have to save all of them, though.
You don't have to save all of them, but you're rewarded for doing so with the true ending where Pac-Man shakes the hand of the ghost and says, I forgive you. It's a wholesome, fun family experience. And anyone can enjoy it.
All right. Well, after those two closings, I am now ready for my verdict. Both of these games, if I had a PlayStation and I was subscribed to PlayStation Plus, I might want to play both of these, but I will agree with Lando that Pac-Man World Re-Pac, to quote one of my favorite art commenters, Ango Gavlogian, it does sound a bit derivative. So I will have to go with High on Life for this one.
I think that's the correct choice.
All right. Well, this has been OTR Debate, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks.
Thanks.